you like about the Beatles, anyway?
I like their music and the way they dress and their hair and their look.
They look like girls to me.
They do not.
By late 1966, the Beatles weren't just a band. They were an unstoppable cultural monopoly. They had just released Revolver, stopped touring to become studio gods, and practically owned the global music charts. Defeating them on the Billboard charts wasn't just difficult, it was statistically unprecedented. Until December 31st, 1966, the final week of the year, the Beatles were pushed aside by a band that technically didn't even exist a year prior. A band put together by Hollywood executives through a classified ad. The Monkees released I'm a Believer, and it didn't just hit #1. It locked down the top spot for 7 consecutive weeks, went straight to gold before it even debuted on the charts, and went on to become the biggest selling single of the entire year of 1967. This is the story of how a corporate experiment, a desperate Tin Pan Alley songwriter, and a 20-year-old singer who recorded his vocals after a grueling 10-hour acting shift created a pop masterpiece that outsold the Fab Four. To understand why I'm a Believer conquered the world, you have to understand the machine behind it. In 1965, television producers Bob Rafelson and Bert Schneider wanted to cash in on the youth counterculture explosion sparked by the Beatles film, A Hard Day's Night. They couldn't hire the Beatles, so they decided to build their own. They auditioned over 400 hopefuls, eventually landing on 4 distinct personalities. But the executives didn't need them to play instruments. In the 1960s, the Hollywood studio system relied on a sharp division of labor. The television producers handled the visuals, while Don Kirshner, the quote, man with the golden ear, was brought in to manage the music. Kirshner's strategy was simple: bypass the band's musical limitations entirely. He hired legendary studio musicians, known as the Wrecking Crew, to cut the backing tracks. And he tapped the finest songwriters in America, Carole King, Tommy Boyce, Bobby Hart, and Neil Sedaka, to write the hooks. The strategy worked. The show premiered in September 1966, and their first single, Last Train to Clarksville, hit #1 in November. The Monkees were a multimedia juggernaut. Every single week, millions of teenagers watched a 30-minute commercial for the band's music, disguised as a sitcom. But Kirshner knew they needed an absolute monster of a follow-up single to cement their status and permanently dethrone the British invasion. Enter Neil Diamond. In early 1966, Diamond was a struggling brill-building songwriter who had been fired from 5 different publishing houses. He was finally gaining traction as a solo artist with Solitary Man and Cherry Cherry. But he was still actively pitching his songs to other artists, just to make ends meet. Diamond had written a track called I'm a Believer. Interestingly, he didn't write it as a sugary pop song. Diamond envisioned it as a country song. He tried to pitch it to country star Eddie Arnold, who turned it down. He then pitched it to a pop group called the Fifth Estate. Rejected again. Don Kirshner heard the demo, recognized the raw potential of the hook, and bought the rights for the Monkees. he handed the track to producer Jeff Berry to soup it up for a pop audience. Barry assembled the session musicians at RCA Studios in New York. They injected the track with a driving, upbeat tempo. An iconic, bouncy Vox organ riff played by Stan Free, and an aggressive tambourine track. Neil Diamond himself sat in on the session, playing the acoustic rhythm guitar that anchors the track's drive. The instrumentation was flawless, but it still lacked a voice.
Move those lights! We are losing time!
Because the band members were busy filming the television show for 10 to 12 hours a day.
Clear the frame!
Recording sessions had to happen late at night. Mickey Dolenz was selected to sing lead vocals. Dolenz walked into the studio after a brutal day on set, completely exhausted. Decades later, he recalled that his life at the time was such a chaotic blur that he didn't even remember the specific session, where he laid down the track.
It's probably my signature Monkees tune, but I have no memory of making it.
But that exhaustion worked to the track's advantage. Dolenz's vocal performance isn't smooth or polished. It has a gritty, cynical, almost punk rock edge in the verses before exploding into pure joy during the chorus. He perfectly captured the narrative of the song. A cynical guy who thought love was just a myth invented for fairy tales. Suddenly converted by the sight of a face. When Coal Jim's Records released the single in late November 1966, the demand was instantaneous. Backed by heavy rotation on 4 consecutive episodes of the TV show, the record's advanced orders exceeded 1 million copies. It was certified gold before it even touched the charts. By the end of December, it took the #1 spot, keeping the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and the Beach Boys at bay. In 1967, the Monkees actually achieved the unthinkable. They briefly outsold the Beatles and the Rolling Stones combined. As you can imagine, this massive success came with severe internal tension. The band members, particularly Michael Nesmith and Peter Tork, hated being called the Prefab Four. They resented the fact that they weren't allowed to play on their own records. The roaring success of I'm a Believer gave Don Kirshner total leverage, but it also pushed the band to revolt. Shortly after the song's run at the top, Nesmith famously threatened to quit, punching a hole through a hotel wall during a meeting with executives, demanding that the band get control of their own musical output.
I don't like you at all.
They eventually won that battle, firing Kirshner and playing their own instruments on their 3rd album, Headquarters. Yet, despite the corporate engineering, the studio politics, and the lip-syncing controversies, I'm a Believer endured. It found a second life 35 years later, when Smash Mouth covered it for the Shrek soundtrack in 2001, introducing the hook to an entirely new generation. Ultimately, I'm a Believer proved that a pop song didn't need to come from organic garage band origins. To be genuine, it just needed a brilliant songwriter, world-class session players, an electric vocal performance, and a massive media engine to take over the world. Thanks for watching Groovy Tunes with Dell.
Hello there, my friends. I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Peace and love to you all.
If you want more deep dives into the weird corporate and chaotic history of classic rock, hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment down below, and we'll see you next time.